through the system and so on, that people can get on with what they need to do, and that there is no, special voice here, and also honouring the work that some of us have done for many years to try and get us to this point. So I'm really here in deep gratitude for everything that people have contributed. It's the unseen people that, as my friend Jamie Kelsey Fry says, who emptied the piss buckets at 4 o'clock in the morning on Waterloo Bridge, who are chopping vast quantities of vegetables, who took it upon themselves to print thousands of these flags that people keep walking away with because they're so cool, that are, the engine room of this movement. And there's a deep gratitude in my spirit for all of us for taking part in that. We live in times which require a paradigm shift. In my opinion, we live in a paradigm in which we're told that we live in a world that's really scarce, and we have to be in vast competition with each other, and that we're separated from each other, and that your needs and my needs are in opposition to each other, and that actually we're powerless, and that's where we have to sit, and we just have to be in this mad machinery and keep our heads down. And that's the paradigm that we live in, and that's the paradigm that's seeing the life on Earth being killed at vast and accelerating rates. And for me, a really beautiful part of the rebellion is the place where we get to prefigure and paradigm shift the transition that's needed. And what that means to me is that this is not scarcity. What's scarce about hanging out together in the park, feeling in love with each other, and feeling connected to each other, and like we've got a purpose that we want to do together. And it's a for many people, they say to me, and I feel like this, I've been waiting all my life to do this. This is the time that we knew was coming. Yeah, I mean, there's a prophecy that's talked about in Buddhism called the Shambhala prophecy, when the earth's been destroyed at a vast and accelerating rate, and the Shambhala warriors rise up. And I don't want to say that with any arrogance or lack of humility, but I have that feeling so often, maybe you do. There's so many synchronicities happening in this movement, people feeling that they're here at the right time for the right reasons, and that they've got a role to play. And I really hope that you've had that feeling. And that there's political theory that says that the power lies in the collective. It doesn't interest me really to get fussed about who the next Prime Minister of Britain is. It's a circus, right? Just talking to somebody from Time magazine about psychedelics is a sort of interest of mine. And the drug consumption that happens in politics and in the finance system, it's really unhealthy drugs, Have you seen George Osborne coked off his tits in Parliament? It's this sort of Bullingdon Club thing I hear. They've got to work out how much coke you can take and not look mental, and I think there was a couple of times he got the dosage wrong. But that's what politics and the finance system works off, is people being in heightened states of competition and arrogance, and that's not a peaceful place in your soul. I sometimes think that there's a deep despair that sits underneath that, and that's being filled by a desire to feel powerful in an unhealthy way. And I don't feel in opposition to the people that are in the finance system or on the right of politics. They're all part of our family. We're all wounded human beings. We all have trauma that needs healing. And I really long for us all to do that healing in a really deep way. And I think that the way we rebel together, we talk about our regenerative culture. And what we mean by that is, as much as we need to recognise that there's a crisis, we also need to not burn out trying to fix it. Because it's not going to be fixed, this thing. Sorry. There's a possibility that we'll slow it down and that we'll get to repair things over many centuries if we really step up in these times. But we are going to have many losses, and we need to learn how to grieve. And part of that is really knowing how to look after ourselves, when to slow down, when to take a break. I bumped into a sister yesterday who just been with the regenerative land-based regeneration team. She'd been to a farm for a month and just chilled out. She'd been organising actions over and over for months and needed a break. And I feel reassured when I see people in our movement that take that time out to look after themselves. And it is the inner work as well that we need to do. We're the less that we can be in our ego the more that we can be in service. You know, I have a practice where I do pray, and I don't totally know what that means. I'll just wait for that to shut up. It feels like a conversation with the universe in some ways, and there is some science there that says that, you know, teleology and purpose in the universe may be a real phenomena. But whether it is or not is part of what I do. And I think just to say I'm here in service to life on Earth, you know, if I ever see a bit of ego going, ooh, look at, you know, I got in Time magazine, or what, it's just fuck off, you know, come on. It's not what it's about. It's not about our own egos, and we're going to work together better if we deal with some of those issues that we bring to our organising. And in that way, so what inner work do we need to do? What stresses are we bringing to the table? But also, how are we functioning between us? You know, how does the patriarchy sit between us? And I don't mean as a male-female thing. We're all running that operating system at the minute. How is that showing up in our movement? You know, how do we tackle that? How's the homophobia showing up? How's the oppression of disabled people showing up? You know, and not to get on at anybody, but have we thought about accessibility at this event? You know, we're not going to get things right, but can we move in the direction of better by being really open in our conversations with each other? And in that way, I think, you know, you have speakers get on stage and it's the sort of special folks or the experts or whatever. I think what we really need to move into is having panels where a certain demographic of folks are invited onto the stage, and we just simply ask, you know, whether it's queer folks or people of colour or whatever, you know, what is it like for you being in this movement? What's good? What's not? What's hard? What's not working? You know, what do you need to see change? What do you want people to know? Just, you know, it's just a personal opinion from different people. Everybody have a different perspective, but I think it's time that we started having that conversation in a deeper way within our movement, because to prefigure the changes is about us reconnecting. And a really huge bit of that, and certainly know I'm on a personal journey for this. I've been helping to design some thinking around international and, you know, this Radiohead's money that's hopefully coming in soon. It's not in the bank yet. How that might be spent. And I just realised I was designing a thing where I didn't think about the UK as being international. We were laughing at me. It's like a total child of the fucking empire. Do you know what I mean? Like, centre of the universe. We don't have to think that we're international. I mean, it's just baked in, isn't it? It's nobody's fault. We're a no blame and shaming movement. It's not about giving yourself a hard time. It's like, oops, did that thing again. And you know, another piece of that is, you know, I've got a beautiful sparrow's wing here. I came across a little sparrow that died hitting a bush shelter, I assumed, and being a proper little pagan, witchy type of person, it's really normal behaviour in Stroud. You like see a dead bird and you're like honouring its body and its life and pulling its wings off to make earrings with. But anyway, it's partly because I absolutely fucking love sparrows. House sparrows were in packs in my parents' garden as a little one, and they've declined by 77%. And I just, every time I think about it, I want to cry. You know, I miss them so deeply. I can't. And when I see them in little packs, I'm just like, oh, they're there. And I wonder why I don't feel like that when I see things that are happening in Bangladesh or in other countries. There's some part of my heart. It's racism, right? It's being frozen and separated from people in other countries. And sometimes it's a bit overwhelmed of how much kind of catastrophe stuff you can take on board. But I think that it's an absolute key challenge for this movement to not only reach out and be in solidarity, in active solidarity with the other countries and frontline communities. And frontline communities here, the anti-fracking movement, the HS2 folks, you know, talking to Leith Hill, they're having a really difficult time up at Preston New Road at the minute. By the way, they would love XR people to get up there. They're so welcoming. So if you want to trip up, I fucking love Blackpool, by the way. That was a holiday for me when I was a child. That's when we went abroad. We went from Yorkshire to Lancashire. That's like a trip overseas as a coal miner's daughter. You know, you used to have a coach take you from the miners' club with a bottle of pop, and used to keep you quiet. They used to say, you'll get 50 pence the person who sees Blackpool Tower first, and we'd be like glued to the window with our pop and a packet of crisps, like just half a mile out of Southend. So that kept us quiet. Anyway, get up to Blackpool and visit the frontline communities. So you've got the Extinction Rebellion UK Internationalist Solidarity Network, their work has been relatively invisible today, partly because we don't want to make a song and dance of it, and also because that piece of the work has to be built quite slowly and thoughtfully with people from the global south, from the majority world, leading that work. We have supported some frontline communities of resistance in Ghana and done some solidarity actions in the UK, but that's going to need to be a huge piece of what we do. And when I can feel it and my heart melts and I feel the family reweaving back together again, I know that something is being deeply separated from me as a white person, and that shift is going to be an explosive place of both grief and love when we fuse that family and bring that family back together again. And we need each other. You know, the multi-breadbasket failure, when food crops fail across the world, is coming, and it's going to be failing in different parts of the world. And if we're not in solidarity with each other, we're not thinking about how to look after displaced people, we're going to have a 10% displacement, at least in the UK. We're all going to be facing these issues. We might lose our harvest one year. It's not about shoring up our own security. Either everybody's secure or none of us is secure. And I think we really have to learn that. So yeah, I think that we need to focus on the fact that we've done something amazing with this movement already. And alongside the school strikes, the work that David Attenborough's been doing here, and the IPCC report, something's shifted. The Overton window, as they call it, has shifted. And I've got colleagues that send them love and blessings. They're going to Tory Glastonbury soon to, we have our friends on the right who are environmentalists. We need to not feel in some ideological battle. It's what they call teal consciousness, when you stop thinking we're on this linear separated pathway. They all have something in common. Life is precious when you focus on purpose and what you love, and that happens across the political spectrum, at least to an extent. And I'm not in any way saying I'm okay with austerity politics and all that sort of bullshit, right? But something shifted as a result of this movement, and I think on 2-3 levels. One is that we recognise the necessity of grief and facing our trauma, and there is something beautiful that happens through that process. It's really unhinging and unsettling when you're in the middle of it, and it comes in waves, and I encourage people to trust it and to feel it and to be with it. And it feels like an unravelling to me. It feels like really transformative, and it's understood that people shift their lives when they face trauma, and that opens up people's hearts. And when you love, and grief is love has a cost, and it's grief because we will always be separated from things we love. That's the nature and price of life, right? But when you love something deeply, then you're courageous. Like if I would gnaw my own arm. My kids are so boring, actually. They're just into football, they're not into any of this stuff, but I would actually gnaw my own arm off to feed them. It's just when you love something with a passion, it's the courage that comes from that. So we've done something amazing on that level, in terms of saying to the environmental movement, we have to fall in love with nature and each other, and be willing to fight with our lives in a beautiful and peaceful and respectful way for what we believe in. And we've also started prefiguring how we are together, hanging out I keep saying this, but there was a moment at Marble Arch where I was talking to strangers, and some people were making music, and we knocked up a kitchen in the middle of the fucking road. I think that's just fantastic. It's like, fuck, there's a fucking kitchen making vegan food in the middle of the road. We did that. It's a sense of collective power. It's brilliant. And I just, who wants to fucking fly to Ibiza for a bit of techno and have a burger? You've had an experience like that. It's amazing, right? That's the stuff of life. I think keep saying to people, don't miss out. The next rebellion will be on the streets, we believe, October 7th is what we're talking about. So plan it, tell your friends and so on. Let's get everybody there. So that's one of the shifts that have happened. That togetherness, the Overton windows shifted. You've got Tory leaders talking about I think Michael Gove today has been saying we're in an absolute crisis. He's got that permission space. It's easy when they're on the way out, isn't it, to talk the truth? But at least they are doing that. So these things have been happening, but we have not met any of our demands yet. Demand number one, tell the truth. the media aren't telling the truth. This is not, I know it's really problematic using a wartime analogy, but I do think it sort of works on some levels. You know, if there was 20 Hitlers lining up to come and like get us, it would be talked about constantly, right? And so the truth is not out there yet. There's more conversations happening, but not in real emergency mode, not like, fuck, how do we sort this terrible thing out? So the truth is not yet being told. This target of 2050 is basically a death warrant for the majority of humanity and possibly, you know, a Permian mass extinction event. We cannot kick the ball into the long grass that far. There's this sort of nonsense from the IPCC report in the sense that there were 12 years. There aren't 12 years, right? I mean, there were 12 years ago. There is no carbon budget when you're at 410 or whatever it is parts per million. I was talking to Professor Kevin Anderson about this the other day. We're still talking about carbon budget. I know you have to operate within that paradigm, Kevin, that obviously there's no carbon budget, is there? And he was like, yeah, you're right. There's no carbon budget. We've got to take the carbon out of the atmosphere. But what I was reassured to do, and I had the honour of being on a panel with Sir David King in Glastonbury, who was the former chief scientist during Blair's years. Let's not hold that against him. One of the things they did, we were, to an extent, a leading country, and we had the first Climate Change Act back then. I mean, we just ditched all the targets, and we've lied about the carbon budgets and all, you know, the sort of carbon reduction that we've done. It's a bit of nonsense, a bit of creative accounting that's been going off. Don't include flying or consumerism or shipping. You know, just somebody else is somehow in charge of that. Like, as Kevin Anderson said, is that God or something? Is he or she in charge of that? But so the truth is not being told about the date. We cannot have the date being kicked into the future. There are no carbon budgets. We have to start repairing, and that's what was good to hear from Sir David King, is that he is setting up a Centre for Climate Repair, and that's the phrase that we need to move into, right? Is we need to stop harming and start repairing. I think that's. I'm talking to. We have a team led by Skeena Thor called the Vision Sensing Team. It's a part of teal organisations to think about the sort of evolution, vision and purpose of a movement, and that's the way the shift needs to move now. Is visioning. And it's very baked into many cultures. In the Jewish culture, you talk about Tikkun Olam, you know, healing the world. In African languages, Ubuntu, you know. So we can say that in many different culturally relevant ways, that we're in this choice now between, people recognise as emergency. Do we want to have less democracy, as in fascism? That's a pathway that's laid out before us. Or do we want to go the direction of more democracy, people's assemblies, doing it for ourselves, and healing and repairing harm? And I think that's a vision we need to hold to. So we haven't also met the third demand. Oh, by the way, the second demand includes halting biodiversity loss. And if these issues are not seen together, it's madness. You know, the two things are completely intimately linked, and the solutions to different aspects of the ecological crisis, like the depletion of the soil, is also a solution to the climate crisis. You know, farms have lost between 50 and 70% of the carbon in their soil. And there are techniques of farming that will recapture the soil and the carbon, and guess what? It makes biodiversity. Hedgerows could be thickened and capture carbon by 50%. I personally think that farmers are a crucial part of the change that's needed. And I was recently at a farming conference, and I said to them, come on, stop being so fucking British. Get out on the streets with your tractors. That's like the French, you know. And there was a rather warm reception for that, actually. I spoke to the president of the National Farmers Union, Minette Batters, afterwards, and said, well, obviously I expect you to get your tractor out. And then she's like, no, don't count on it. I might do. We were sort of high-fiving, you know. I mean, let's see. But I think there's a spirit there that we've opened up the space around. So the third demand's about a citizens' assembly. We want a citizens' assembly of around 100 people selected through random sortition processes representing the demographics of the UK. They'd be taught critical thinking skills, and what they come up with would be legally binding. And the citizens' assembly that's been announced, it doesn't include DEFRA, so the whole farming situation's not being thought about within that. It's very business and technology focused. It's got 2050 as a date. It's not looking at biodiversity loss. And most crucially, it doesn't have justice in the way that ours does. We redefined ours to correct a mistake we'd been doing as a movement, which was not centering climate justice strongly enough in our messaging. So just before the April Rebellion, we changed that demand to clarify that we wanted climate justice and ecological justice to be the result of that. And that means at home and overseas. You know, when you get interviewed by the press, they're often trying to set the green movement up against working class and ordinary people, and I just totally don't buy that. You know, my nana's house was like Freegal. You know, she said, "You used to go around." She said, "Do you want a toaster?" She said, "I don't know where they all turned up from." You know, somebody got rid of their toaster. My nana, working class people are really good at this stuff, actually, frugality, and there is no way that we can. There is no way that we can solve this crisis by taxing people who are struggling to make ends meet, by taking money away from public services. And this is why it's been resisted, because it's sort of obvious, you know, when a wartime situation happens, the rich have to put their hands in the pockets. That's what happens in the wars. We know that there's 123 billion held overseas in tax havens. We know that they want to spend, 250 billion on Trident. You know, did you see that Stormzy video with the artist taxi driver? Where's the magic money tree? It was brilliant, wasn't it? It's in fucking Panama, he's saying. You know, it exists. It's offshore. There's $20 trillion of money held offshore. Actually, it's pounds. 20 trillion pounds of money held in. The money exists if we want to do it. It's about political will, and that's what our job is to see the political will. So we haven't met that third demand because justice, both at home and overseas, you know, we're not saying we want to promote some really massively extractivist situation where the UK is going to be covered in technology and fuckloads of other countries extracting their resources. You know, that's not the situation that we're trying to promote here. So we're in a process of thinking about future strategy in Extinction Rebellion at the minute, and things aren't decided, and there needs to be feedback processes, and frankly we still haven't got good enough at that. I don't know who's on Basecamp here and in various Facebook groups. We just have not got that bit right. Some of us that have been, 10 of us set off doing this thing, well, sort of 15 and a few people fell away. Let's let that one go. And the way it feels to me was like we got on this bike and started pedalling, and there wasn't enough room for the people arriving, so we started bolting on bits of train or something, and it's still moving, and it's been like a mad roller coaster being involved, and I can honestly tell you we're doing our best. We did a debrief some time ago, and sometimes you get this thing of like, who are these people, what are they up to? And by the way, I've got absolutely fuck all to do with 5G, if you've ever seen any of that shit that's out there. I mean, thank you. It's fucking nonsense. If anybody wants to ask me, Ape, seeing some shit online, I'm happy to answer questions. I mean, woman had job is like the story there, like everybody else did. But thank you. And I'm not saying I'm for or against 5G. I just don't know anything about it really. I mean, been asking around a bit, but the strategy going forward is to do a feedback process, and there's a moment when you're thinking, well, who are these people? We're in a debrief, I think after the November rebellion, and so, by the way, here's some of the people that helped get this thing going. Do we look like, ridiculous ego-driven tyrants who are fucking secretly running this show for their own personal benefit, or do we just look a bit tired? Because we're a bit knackered. And so anyway, we're simply doing our best. The way I feel it is that we are trying to create a new democracy from a broken democracy. How do you design a new democracy in a democratic way? You can't, can you, right? You're not going to have all the right people there, and so all you can do is improve and just try and find a way in for people to find their place in this movement. So the strategy going forwards to be discussed. I've got my own view about it. One in particular is that after we've been back on the streets, and I think there will be, I don't know if it's been announced yet, but tax disobedience is that kind of thing. You sort of have to do 3 different action types. One is getting on the streets. That's our togetherness. That's our show of strength. There's the story, and look at all these folks. Another is a more distributed type of action, which you can do from wherever you are, which could be a tax disobedience. I'll talk about debt resistance in a minute. And the third type is doing the more high-risk, high-sacrifice actions that not everybody wants to be part of, but some people feel that they're ready to do that piece. And therein lies the conversation about whether we want to close down an airport or not. You know, there's been that conversation that's been happening within the movement. And just so that this isn't misreported like it was yesterday, I am not here to announce anything about airports, but I will share my own personal view, which is that I believe that we do need that type of action within our movement. If we are telling the truth about this crisis, it will involve shutting down projects that are high carbon and high madness. You know, Heathrow Airport's third runway is an absolute fake democracy fiasco. The Prime Minister at the time was against it, the local MP, all the local councils, and yet it was still getting this disastrous third runway that's going to bulldoze loads of communities, create additional noise and pollution, and have the same carbon emissions, I think, as something like Cyprus. It's absolute nonsense. I think they talk about offsetting it by doing something in Wales with peat bogs or something. Well, do you know, we have to be doing the things in Wales with peat bogs anyway. That's what we have to be doing, not creating more carbon. There is no such thing as offsetting. You know, I flew in 2016. You don't offset a flight. This is just a made-up thing. You can tax yourself and acknowledge that you've just harmed the planet, but it's not. There's no such thing as offsetting. You know, it's just a sort of made-up concept, really. So if Heathrow goes ahead, you know, the point is we're just working with some rules that they've got to do with that airport, which is that if any of these little machines are flown anywhere, they have to close the airport. So there are some people that are absolutely in their power and their truth and want to be part of that and are willing to go to jail. And I personally feel in deep solidarity and love and gratitude when people are feeling like that. It can be done in a really beautiful way, you know, pink streamers and ribbons and flowers. It doesn't, and you can fly little toys at head height. Do you see what I mean? We're not talking about anything that would in any way endanger anybody if that action goes ahead. So I'm happy to take any questions and comments about any of this afterwards. The bit that I'm really longing for is because I often see Extinction Rebellion as being less about the environment and more about democracy, saying this democracy is not working for us, and to an extent about the media as well, just saying this is a fake democracy and a toxic media, in the language of sort of Gene Sharp, who's the father of civil resistance, that there are pillars that hold the system in place. A fake democracy is one of them, a toxic media that's telling the truth, it's there for self-service, for rich and powerful, as is the corporate capture of democracy. And the third pillar is the finance system. And even if, this is just again personal opinion, even if, you know, our democracy shakes its arse together and gives us a proper citizens' assembly, and we have some great policies in the UK, and that happens in other countries, the finance system is like, Charles Eisenstein did a brilliant piece with a guy recently about a mad paperclip machine. It's just here converting life into paperclips or whatever, some useless shit that we don't know, you know, like the fashion industry is one of the biggest carbon footprints. And it will just carry on doing that. So it'll create artificial intelligence to make more paperclips, and then the artificial intelligence will, you know, take the workforce and turn them into paperclips, and before you know it, the whole world turned into paper. You see what I mean? I mean, it's just a mad machine, isn't it? And so what I think we need to do is have this vision that we're stopping the harm and that we're repairing the harm, and that's beyond the environment. That's to do with how we're treating each other, how we're treating the most vulnerable in our society, what it means when you've got a mental health crisis amongst, well, all people, but especially our young people. You know, all of that needs to be changed. And the root cause is this idea of scarcity, separation and powerlessness. So we vision this stopping and harm and repairing it together and feeling together and being in our power. And then we have three demands, and we say international bodies, this is, I just keep wanting to say this, personal opinion, right? International bodies, tell the truth. The reason the humanity is facing its biggest crisis is because the operating system of humanity is not working for us. political, economic, cultural, social, technical, legal system. Polly Higgins, my dear beloved sister Polly Higgins, who died in April, who was fighting for the law of ecocide, had to put her in the ground. Anyway, it's just a beautiful thing to see her name on that boat, actually. And still a shock that I'm in trying to recover from her rapid demise. But she wanted to change law at the highest level, at the UN level, and so it's that kind of shift that needs to happen. You can buy up law, by the way. First of all, there is missing law, the law of ecocide. Secondly, you can go offshore. They're not called tax havens, actually called secrecy jurisdictions, because you just have whatever regulation you like in a different country if you're rich and a corporation. Or you can buy injunctions like they've been doing to the fracking movement and so on. You can just literally go off and create an injunction, persons unknown, and buy some law that way. To say there's one rule for the rich and one for the rest of us is an understatement. So demand number one: tell the truth. This is not working for us. I would say spiritually. I would add a spiritual element, and you can be an atheist, in my opinion, and still have that felt sense in your body of something deeper that's longing to be expressed, which I would use that word for. But you can think of a different word. The second one would be internationally binding demands about stopping and repairing harm, and I think then you can look at the reparations agenda. And then the third one would be that we want an international citizens' assembly, a multi-stakeholder panel to rewire humanity, to say how are we going to do this differently. I think everything has to be on the table. A debt-based economy, creating money as a debt and economic growth and all the rest of it. This doesn't make sense. And this is not about, as I say, it's not ideological saying we're anti-capital. I don't actually think it's useful using that language. It makes us sound like a bunch of mad lefties. And everybody has a different definition of capitalism. And I know some pro-capitalists who don't believe that we've got capitalism. I'm definitely not pro-capitalism, to be clear. But, capitalism, you're supposed to have open and free markets. The father of neoliberalism, which is the sort of form of capitalism on crack cocaine that we're running as our operating system at the minute, Milton Friedman. There's a video of him online. It's one of my favourite videos. He's banging on about the wonders of capitalism. There's loads of factories making shit, and there's all this stuff being produced, and it's all innovative, and how cool is that? And then at the end he says, because of the wonders of the market system, power will not be concentrated, and therefore no harm will be done. And I think, wow, Milton, you and I are on that vision on the same page. I want no power to be concentrated and therefore no harm to be done. But your experiment of this free market stuff, which is based on classical economics and not on dynamical economic systems, if you want to get nerdy about it, George will go and talk to you about that down there. It ignores the economics of Schumpeter and so on. But it is not working. Okay, it weren't working in 2008 when it nearly crashed itself, and it is a house of cards built on sand. If the ecological crisis doesn't crash this system, the finance system will. So this system has to go, and we can replace it with something better. And it needs to be. There's lots and lots of people who've been thinking about what that looks like over many years. And again, I'd say it doesn't have to be ideological. I've made some friends with people who happen to be rich and make investments, and maybe they're the people who know how to do that well, but it has to be done with democracy behind it, right? Or you have cooperative run businesses where if you listen to Frederick Laloux and reinventing organisations, there's an emerging business form that's purpose-led. It's really beautiful to read about it. These things are coming online at the minute, and the big question is, will they come online fast enough? And it's just entirely down to us that. So how are we going to get this rewiring of humanity that we need? We do, don't we? We need to rewire it. It's not fucking working. It's not working for me. I think we have to have a mass debt refusal and rent refusal, where we say, no, I'm not paying. I'm not playing this game anymore. And I think how you can do that is using something along the line of blockchain technologies, but not the mad algorithm ones that are eating too much energy up. I've got techies looking into it at the minute, but you'll have a way of uploading your. I'm going to refuse to pay my student loan. I'm going to tell people I'll never earn enough money, and we just Yeah, awesome. What a load of bullshit, student loans. I mean, so I'm not paying my mortgage, or if it's, no, I'm not going to be paying my rent, whatever. It'd be interesting to know. Maybe I met somebody recently, IPPR, that might do a study about it. Like, how much do we need to wobble this system before we can say to it, see, you're going to have to check, because they all know it needs to change, right? Did you read that Douglas Rushkoff article about billionaires that are building bunkers? And his conclusion is that this is not team human, this is separation, this is despair. Who wants to live in a bunker for... I'm going down, like, in a beautiful way fighting, I don't want to be in some bunker, with some tins of beans to eat. I want to live in a beautiful, nature-filled world, and if, we get shot on the streets fighting for it, so be it. In all honesty, I'm willing to have that happen. I'm not calling for it to happen, but you know what I mean? So I think we can do a mass debt refusal, and that's where I'm thinking about where we need to go next. So I'm just checking, because I've just rambled on. I think, just checking in with you, do you want to take some questions? Yeah. Oh, hey. Oh, I'm just seeing a sister here. I just love everybody. I mean, I'm just in total fucking hippie and love fest at the minute. It's just... But the thing is now, we're just beautiful. I know there's a phrase, we are the people that we've been waiting for. It was when George and I started Compassionate Revolution, they made a song for us, this guy called Dinesh, and that was baked in, wasn't it? We're the people that we've been waiting for, and I know we're all a bit fucked up and a bit broken, but we're beautiful as well, and we're good enough, we can do this thing. So thank you for all that you're doing, and if people have got, questions, I sit on what's called the anchor circle of Extinction Rebellion. If you want to tell us off for where we've been annoying, just feel free. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Would you